We have the great privilege now of turning our attention to words of teaching and learning and reflecting given by the one and only Rabbi Stephen Foster. And we are so grateful to have opportunities to learn from and with him. We usually get to hear you on Yom Kippur, and it is such a pleasure to get a little extra of your wisdom as you share it.
You going to stand here, the two of you?
No.
So we didn't put the Torah
Like-
before service first?
No, it's all right. Like President Trump, I get even. Nobody heard that. I thought that was a good comeback. Yeah, okay. Well, it is a joy, and I thank you for the privilege. But I have to be honest with you, it was not what we were planning to do. You didn't talk about that at all. Well, it would be nice. I mean, that way. And if Uncle Max were here, may he rest in peace. He was one of our favorites. I would say, well, I want to start. He said, start somewhere near the end. That was an old Uncle Mac, but I can't do that. But I do have to say, I am a little upset that you said they're going out to do reglach. You didn't say that we're going to eat the reglach. They're going out to cook the and you said the rest of the service is not really something they want to watch. Ooh. Chopped liver here? I mean, come on, it's all right. It's all right. A little bit of humor doesn't ever hurt in days. I know you don't think it's humor. I do. Well, I do want to tell you that yesterday I was in Trinidad. I went down there to do services. It's a small congregation. I think there's only one person who lives in Trinidad who's a member. There were about 50 people. It was wonderful. People have made Trinidad and that synagogue a cause célèbre for themselves and for their families. And that's because the synagogue is the oldest synagogue in Colorado, 134 years old. And it really was a joy to be with the people who have taken seriously making sure that that building does not go away. And it was fun to be there. So I do have to say that what I'm going to say to you now, was anybody there yesterday? I don't know about those people, but I have no idea. But I did. But it used to be here that we used to do morning services twice, evening services twice. So we had to repeat. So this is a repetition. This is my repetition. It's like reading Torah twice. Okay. Well, I have to say to you that a number of years ago, many years ago, Joyce and I were asked to go to do a life cycle event on the East Coast. It was in Connecticut. And the best way to get there, obviously, was to take a plane. And the best way to go for the family's sake was to go to LaGuardia, which we did. But then how do you get the next 50 miles? I mean, you're doing a thing for a family, right? They sent a driver. It was really nice. Big car. It was really terrific. And all of a sudden, the driver gets in the car and he pulls out whatever it was at the time and he plugged it all in and he put it up there. I mean, I'm talking about well over 20 years ago. And he put it in. I said, I never saw that before. What is it? What are you doing? He said, this is a GPS. And I'm setting the route to get where we have to go. And I said, oh, that was really nice. And I started to think about it. And I have to tell you that I have used this beginning before. This is not the first time. But the truth is the more I use it, the more I realize that this is that time. Rosh HaShanah is that time when we put in that GPS. We put in where it is that we think we're supposed to go. And we realize that even when you do your GPS, I do have to say to some of you, you could really help me a lot. I'm an old man, you know. Judge, I'm an old man, right? I'm an old man, and there's one thing I cannot get straight in this. This is an aside. I can put the map in, and I can never get Surrey to talk to me. And I don't want to put it up here, so I have to look at it and take my eye off, because my backseat driver who sits in the front seat would say, that's Joyce. She would say, don't look ahead, don't look. I cannot figure out how to get Surrey to talk to me. Not right now. But we know that when we put that GPS together, there may be 2 or 3 different ways of getting from one place to another. But the truth is that once we get that map, we know where we're going. And I think this first day of Rosh HaShanah, this second day of Rosh HaShanah itself, I think that's what this day is about. It's a time to place some trust in our GPS system. And we do so not just for these couple of days, we do for a whole month. And the staff here has taken these last years, have really done some really wonderful work in trying to help us understand what this thing is called cheshbon hanefesh, accounting of our own souls. You know, it's nice that we come here, it's nice that we speak, it's nice that we read Torah, it's nice that we sing songs, but that's not what this day or these days are about. It's really about us as human beings looking at what it is that we have done and trying to understand, number one, how we can do it better, how we can ask forgiveness from the people that we have wronged. And I know we can go out of here and say, oh, we haven't wronged anybody that bad. But the truth is we all have. And sometimes we can't really go to them and say, I'm sorry, because we don't even know who we have offended. And I say that myself. If I've offended any of you, and I mean this seriously, if I've offended any of you, I'm sorry. I remember once, years ago, a lady came to me after the holiday. She said, you offended me. I said, tell me what? I didn't even know who she was. I said, what did I do? She said, you were in the grocery store the other day and you didn't say hello. Well, and I said to myself at the time, that's a little unfair. On the other hand, it wasn't unfair. On the other hand, that's how she perceived me, as not caring about her. So that's what this time is about. And I really do believe that the shofar service helps us in this process. I really do believe that. The shofar service is divided into 3 different parts. Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. And the truth is that each one of them has a lesson for us about this day. Let me start with Malchuyot. Malchuyot doesn't mean anything if we're not believers. Now, I want to tell you, I've been a rabbi for a long time, and I can't ever remember a time, I'm sure there was a time, but I can't remember a time when I ever said to somebody, what do you believe? Do you believe? If you don't believe, you can't come in here. I've never done that. And I wouldn't do that now. I'm not asking anybody to raise their hands if they believe in God or raise their hands if they don't believe it. I don't think it's my place to try to do that. But I will say, for me, Malchuyot is serious. Malchuyot is serious because it helps to remind me that this is a kingdom of God. And what we are supposed to try to be is a mamlechet kohanim v'koy kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a holy people. If we believe in God, if we truly believe in God, perhaps we have to understand mostly one of the things that our tradition teaches us. I'm sorry that the kids have gone. I hope that they'll give us a little bit of the reglach. I hope, but I'm not sure that they will. But the truth is, when I was a rabbi, and I loved to speak to bar and bat mitzvah kids, and the one message that I always wanted to give them was that we are all created, b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, all of us, black and white, brown and yellow, smart and dull, gay and straight, man and woman, thin and fat, and go on and on and on. We are all created, b'tselem Elohim. Listen to this story. I think it's a great story. The rabbi asked his gathered disciples, "When can you tell that night has ended and the day has begun?" You guys know this story. The students were silent for a moment, and then the brightest of them offered, "You can tell the night has ended and the day has begun when you can look into the distance and see that a fig tree is not an olive tree. If you cannot make out the difference, then the night has not ended and the day has not begun." "No," said the rabbi, "that's not when you can tell that the night has ended and the day has begun." Well, someone else said, "Could it be then that when you look in the distance and see that a sheep is not a dog, surely that must signal that the night has ended and the day has begun?" "No," said the rabbi, "that is not when you can tell that the night has ended and the day has begun." The students were silent. They had tried all the answers. They pleaded for the rabbi to answer his own question. The rabbi turned to his students and said, "You can tell that the night has ended and the day has begun. When you look in the eyes of any woman or man and see therein the eyes of your sister or brother. For if you do not see the eyes of your sister or brother in the eyes of any woman or man, no matter what time it is, it's still night." I believe that that's what Malchuyot is about. It is about making those distinctions, because if we do not treat each human being as a brother or a sister, someone that is worthy of our time and our attention, I think we make a terrible mistake. If we just live our lives and not think about what those people are, it is a terrible mistake. So I believe Malchuyot reminds us that we have to be reminded of the importance of each and every human being. Second part of the shofar service is called zichronot, remembrances, remembering, thinking about what is it that we remember. Well, for our sake, for now, we remember our tradition, not just the history. History is important, but we remember our tradition. We remember the values of our tradition. You know, I say this so very often, and I really do believe it. If we are to be a mamlechet kohanim v'koy kadosh, no matter how well we keep kosher, it's not going to make a difference. No matter how sweet we think our sounds are in prayer, it's not going to make a difference. It's not about rituals. This is a ritual. I understand that. But it's not about these rituals. It's about our values. And most of you know, those of you who know me, I'm not a ritualistic person. I'm really not. Yeah, we light Shabbos candles, and we don't have shellfish or pork in our home, and there's lots of things we do. I'm here. This is a day, right? And to the best of my ability, even though I'm 80 years old, I still fast on Yom Kippur as best I can. I mean, there are a lot of rituals, but I'm not a ritualistic person. Rituals don't matter to me that much. What matters to me is whether or not we live by the values that are a part of our tradition. Do we live by the values that say, yes, when I see another human being, I see somebody who is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. That's what I think is important. That's what I think. Other people can think differently. It's okay. But for me, Zichronot is about living those values. And when we live those values, we do certain things. Let me just say one word about that in relationship to Israel. Okay, Joyce? We know that there are problems in the state of Israel right now. Has nothing to do with the problems in the United States, although they are similar. Israel is facing an enemy no longer from the outside, but from the inside. And Israel's issues are issues that we can relate to here in this country. We are facing the same kinds of issues. Whether a democracy is going to win out or it's not going to win out. Autocracy versus democracy. On Yom Kippur, we will say, Avinu Malkeinu. Slicha. On Yom Kippur, we will say, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha. We have sinned before you, and we have sinned sinat chinam, the hatred of one for another. There's an old story about the fact that when the temple was destroyed in the year 70, it wasn't the Romans that caused that. It was the fact that we couldn't get along with each other, we as Jews. Sinat chinam was internal. And that is what we are facing today. Whether it's Israelis who are in the streets day in and day out to protect that democracy, or whether it's here. And we can't seem to say, that's my brother, that's my sister, even if we don't agree politically. We are now trying to kill each other. That's sinat chinam. That's not the values that we have been taught. It's not the values that we ought to be living by. If we remember we are all created in God's image, if we remember that we have a tradition that lists our values, and if, because of Rosh HaShanah, we begin again, perhaps we'll get to the right spot. Third part of the shofar service is shofarot. Thank you for sounding the shofar. I heard it. I didn't have to blow the shofar. I have to hear it. And I'm making this point. The word shofarot is one like the sound of the shofar. It's supposed to awaken us. all of us, not some of us, all of us, to how we can make the world a better place, how we can learn to live by those values. It's a call that we hear like no other. And I know that when we began this service and you blew the shofar so beautifully, I could hear and feel that call. And that call is one that says, don't be lazy. Don't say, I have nothing to say or do about any of the stuff that's going on. Don't say I'm not responsible, because we're all responsible. We're responsible for one another, and we're responsible for what goes on in this our great country. I've always believed that. I want to end with another story. How many of you have been to Israel before? That's okay to raise your hand. Oh, that's most of you. Well, for those of you who haven't, those who have are going to go like this, okay? For those of you who haven't, one of the most important things that we do when we go to Israel is we go to the wall. Not the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall. We go there. And sometimes even today we fight about who can pray there and where they. I understand. But for a Jew to go to Israel and not go to the wall, I would never be able to understand that. So we go to the wall. I've been there a couple times. I would never go to Israel anytime and not go to the wall. And I have my own little shtick that I do there. Okay? But I remember once when I went to the wall, it was the first time. I took my grandfather's tefillin. My grandfather, as I was growing up, was not a terribly observant person, but he was Eastern European, and he gave me his tefillin. He said, I want you to have them. And he knew everything. And he really did. He was a musician, and he knew Jewish music, and at any rate. He gave me his tefillin, and I went to Israel, and I went to the wall, and those of you who have been there now, you'll go like this. There's always somebody there who knows things better. And one of those men, because I was on the men's side, you couldn't in those days, I was on the men's side. And one of those men came up to me and he said, you're doing it wrong. Now, I was putting on my and I was taking my time. It still means something to me when I think about it. My grandfather could never do that. He was never able to go to Israel, and I thought I was doing something for him. So here's the story. I once saw a man visiting the wall in Jerusalem, a nice Jewish guy. It was his first time. And he was asked by an enthusiastic Jewish missionizer, would you like to try putting on some tefillin? And he shook his head and said, no, thanks. Well, how about putting on a tallis and say a few prayers? No, thanks. Well, then, let's open a siddur, a prayer book, and look at a few prayers together. And the man said, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to. Then at least try a kippah as you stand here with your fellow Jews. Finally, the American Jewish visitor, in frustration, exclaimed, you don't understand. I'm only a tourist. Question is, are we residents or tourists here? If we're only tourists, we can ignore it all. If we're residents, if we are part of this community, we will understand that everyone is created b'tselem Elohim, that our job is not to forget the values of our people, and that we're not free to sit. We have to be involved. Ken Yehi Ratzon. I hope it will be for all of us. Amen. And later.